Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Eddie Jennings from EJSLLC.com. This video is another in my practice session series about the Red Hat Certified Specialist in Identity Management Exam EX362. Before I dive in, I want to thank returning subscribers for watching another video, as well as invite anyone watching, if you haven't subscribed yet, to click the subscribe button. Also, a reminder that these videos are my practice sessions for the exam. My exam is just under a week away, and so I'm doing one more review through all of the posted objectives by Red Hat and trying to either explain what the objective is about or do some exercises to practice whatever the objective wants you to do. At the end of the video, I'll do a little self-assessment and hopefully I will feel confident with the objective, but if not, I still have a few days to fill in some last-minute knowledge gaps prior to the exam. That being said, these should not be considered tutorials, nor should they be considered any type of authoritative training material. I try to have the information accurate because hopefully at this point in my preparation I have not learned something wrong, but understand I'm learning right along with you, so do not consider these authoritative information. I put these out on the internet in hopes that someone else working toward EX362 might see some of the stuff that I do to practice and would give them some ideas of things that they could do to be able to practice the exam. So moving into the Create and Configure IDM Users and User Policies section, I'm going to look at the Configure Policies and User Access. This, like several of the objectives for the exam, can be kind of overly broad. It does not specify what particular types of policies to look at. So for this, I think I'm going to look at host-based access and some sudo policies. So we're going to log into the, we're actually going to start in the GUI. I might do most of my stuff in the GUI for this particular session. That's one thing to think about for the exam. Unless the exam specifies you must use the GUI to do something, or you must use Ansible to do something, or you must write a script and use non-Ansible CLI commands to do something, you are generally free to do whatever. The goal is to get the thing configured the way that Red Hat wants it and that it will survive reboots of the servers and such. So, when it comes down to the exam time, if it's easier to do stuff in the GUI, do the task in the GUI. If it's easier to do it on the command line, do the command line, or do a combination of the two, whichever is easier to get through it. Right tool for the right job, as I say. I tend to do a lot of stuff with command line, but at the end of the day, the goal is A, to learn the concepts, and generally you've done that before the exam, and B, get through the exam, so you use whatever tools you can. So for policies, I'm going to start, let's see. Well, I can probably go through almost all of these and talk about them. So Kerberos ticket policy. These, and again, this is configure policies and user access. So I would say any of this is fair game. But for Kerberos ticket policies, if you want, you can specify how long a ticket is going to be valid, because when we do knet admin, or you SSH into your machine with your username and password that is your IDM identity, you're going to receive the ticket granting ticket from Kerberos, and that will be valid for X amount of time. You can also make some configurations with the one-time password as far as how long those are valid. These authentication indicators I have not messed with. I might try to generally read over them before the exam, but it could always be on the exam, but you kind of have to think about, all right, so what's the target audience? And it seems like this is more of an overview of IDM, but I may be wrong. It may be an exam on nothing but settings for authentication indicators, and if that's the case, then I'm kind of sunk. But I would think something like Kerberos policy, they may ask you to alter the time for that. Password policies, and this is actually kind of a curious thing. You can take a look at what the global policy is. This is something that you can, I'm just going to click through one here. We can apply these to groups. So let me go ahead and make myself a little test group here. I'll do that on the command line. Practice doing a couple little command bits. So let me SSH lab IDM server. I'll grab a ticket and we'll do IPA group add, and we'll call it test group 1. We'll do IPA group add, member add or group add member. I think it's add member. Yeah. So test group 1, do -- help. I can never remember if it's user or users, -- users. Okay. So users, and we'll just put test user 1 into test group 1. All right, so I have my little group here. Let me refresh this. So we'll add a policy. You can have multiple policies if you want. We will put this for test group 1. Now I think you can do this per user as well. Perhaps we can take a look at that. And priority, I believe this is the lower the number, the higher the priority. So, priority 0 will be greater than priority 100. I'll just give this a 10. That's something that I will want to just kind of flash into my head at some point. And we'll add an edit. And for this, let's say this can last for a day. The minimum lifetime is 1 hour. History size, number of passwords. This would be how many unique passwords you have to have before you can repeat. So I'll say 2 for that. Character classes. This I'm willing to bet is a regex thing. The minimum length. Let's say 5 for minimum length. Max failures. This deals with like your account locking policy, if I am correct. So we'll say 5 max failures. In the failure reset interval, I'm not going to specify that. So we'll click save, and that policy has been saved. I am curious to look at the test group policy. Not test group policy, I just made that. I want to look at the global policy, and it does not have anything for character classes. This is something that I will want to look up because I'm not 100% sure what character classes refers to. So let's say I get on the exam and I need to do something with that and I have forgotten. What I should be able to do is take a look at password, because all the stuff in the GUI you should be able to do on the command line as well. So PW policy, PW policy help. IPA help, PW policy. And we have some examples here. Will it talk about the different min? So min classes is not going to be a regex thing. I was thinking that would give me modify group password policy. So what I need to know is really more about the character classes. I'm surprised that that was not specified in PW policy help, because a lot of times that the top level will give you a little bit more information. So let's do PW policy add -- help. Character classes, yeah, that's something that bothers me. I was thinking that was like a regex thing, but it is not. So that'll be something that I need to, really all of these fields I want to make sure that I do have a good understanding of. And character classes I do not. I want to think, letters, numbers, uppercase, lowercase, but I want to know exactly what that means. Let me take a look at users real quick, because I was fairly sure you could make some password settings for users, individual users. Nope. It's about groups. And yeah, now you see, all right, so take a look at the password policy here for test user 1. And let's take a look at test user 2, and should be different. I was going to do like a login and try to test some stuff out here. Yeah, and you see test user 2, it is, since they are in the test users group, or they are not in the test user or test group 1 group, it will have a different policy. Good. Well, I didn't think about that. That's the easy way to, if you're on the test, to see, is this applying the way that you want? You can take a look at the GUI. What I did want to do under policies, doesn't have a priority. I'm going to make me another test group, and we're going to see if the policy changes here. So let me I guess I'll do this in the GUI. So we'll go to groups, test group 2, add an edit. I'm going to add test user 1 to this group. And let's go back to policy, password policies. This will also apply to test group 1. I'm going to make the priority 5. Ah, I see. Of course. Need to do test group 2 with a priority of 5. It already has a policy for test group 1. And this, I'm going to put the maximum lifetime at 1,000. That'll be the only thing that I change. And so let's go back to test user 1 and see what the policy looks like. And you see here, it has nothing else. It just has the maximum lifetime days 1,000 because of that priority. 5 would be considered higher priority than 10, which is considered higher priority than whatever the global policy was for password policies. All right, other things that we can work with policies. Let me look at my objective again. User access, yeah. So another policy, in this SC Linux user maps, let me click through this. Yeah, this I have not touched. If I have time, I might look at it before the exam. I have a feeling this is not going to be a thing for the exam, but I may be wrong. And if I'm wrong, obviously I can't tell you because of NDA with the exam, but hopefully it won't be the entire exam. Sudo is a curious thing. We don't have any sudo rules that are configured. Basically, you can have sudo commands, which can then be grouped into command groups, which can then be made into rules. So if I were to make a sudo rule, and this, what I typically do in my environments is I'm editing files in etc sudoers.d to manage my sudo stuff. You specify user or group and then whatever commands that you want. That can be managed within IDM, and this is kind of a pretty slick thing. And if you remember, if you look at SSSD configuration after you register a host with IDM, you'll notice that SSSD can control sudo, and this is where that would come in. So we're going to call this test rule 1. I'm going to add an edit, and this is also true with many of the other rules, as far as you're generally going to have this question of who, where, and what. But just going down the list here, sudo order. We'll do a quick little experiment with this, but I believe this is going to follow the same idea as the priority for your password policies. Not 100% sure on that though, so we'll put it to the test. I'll just do 10 for this, and we'll give it a description, rule at order 10. Sudo options, this I am not 100% sure exactly what sudo options does. Let me save this. Apparently it's going to be complaining if I don't do that. I think this is, well, all right, let me go into the command line, become root here. I believe your options are these kind of things, defaults, and setting what the what secure path would be and the like. Not 100% sure on that. That's probably worth me doing a little bit more research on, just to try to familiarize myself with that. But I believe that's what that refers to. So we have for who, we can specify users and or groups. For this, I'm just going to use good old test user 1. You can apply this to groups as well. And you can say if you want a particular host for this sudo rule to apply. So for this, I'm just going to say any, or I guess I'll just say the client machines. And then we can see if there is any kind of difference with this. The sudo rule applies to both client machines, and you can do host groups as well. Now currently, we don't have any commands or any command groups to use with this. The other thing that I do find nifty is there's a deny option. Typically when you're writing sudo rules, it's basically a deny all and allow by exception kind of thing. But I guess if you wanted to actually have some allow and some deny, this would be the way to do it. I would be wary of necessarily using deny, but that's just me. The as whom, typically when we use sudo, we are becoming root, but you can change that, I believe. So we're going to save this. We're going to add, I guess it is already saved. Curious. And it didn't complain. Order 10. All right. So let's make us some sudo commands. And the command that we want to do, let's say that we want them to do hostname. This is very similar to actually writing your commands for sudo as well. And we're just going to add that. Let's go back to our rule. Command groups, it's the same kind of thing. You can make a group, maybe call it like power users, and then when you have your group, you can tell it to use individual sudo commands. You have, and I know some of you out there are probably cringing every time I say sudo. I learned it as sudo. A lot of people say sudo, and I think that's probably technically more accurate, but I grew up with sudo. We're going to add the commands, and of course you can do this via the command line as well. This is one of these things, especially for getting through the exam. I think GUI is probably kind of the way to go with that. All right, and it should be set. So let's SSH into, actually going to have a couple of tabs here. So IDM client 1, I'm going to become root for that. And I'm also going to SSH in as test user 1, 456 monkey. And let's see if we can do sudo hostname. All right. And this I would expect because it takes some time for these policies to be pushed out in SSSD to figure out what's going on. So what I'm going to do as root, we can do SSSCTL, I think it's cache -- help, and that was like a -E. I don't have cache remove. I was thinking it was going to be -E. There was something else. I was sure I've used a command in the past that's SSS, some type of command, -E to blow away the cache, and then you restart SSSD. Or I could just start and stop SSSD, but I thought there was another way of doing it to where do this and then you just no, I guess that wasn't it. Oh, let's do it this way then. I guess I can do -P. Well, that should have already done that. Okay, so now I'm going to try my little sudo again. All right, that's annoying, unless I need to do specifically bin hostname, and that might be the case. SSS cache, that's what I'm thinking about. There it is, SSS cache -E. I knew I wasn't going too crazy, so let me do this. Not restart, but restart SSSD. And we're going to try our sudo one more time. Yeah, bin hostname. All right, so let's update our command to /bin/hostname. Oh yeah, I can't update the command. I got to blow it away and start a new one. Crumble. So bin hostname add. This is one of these things on the exam I highly recommend if you are having to do yeah, I can't delete that because it's a part of a rule. If you are having to write sudo rules to test everything with that. Now this might be where command line will be quicker to blow this rule away. It's not something I have practiced on the command line, so I'm kind of limited to the GUI. I guess technically I could have just added it to the rule. Okay, so let's do the SSSD dance. So kill the cache, and let's try it again. And there we go. So I was able to successfully do sudo hostname. Now the one thing I did want to try as far as, and if well, I'm kind of getting off track just a bit. Log out of this and log into client 2 just to confirm that it's going to work the way that I intend. I guess this is not updated SSSD yet either. So let's do this. I'm going to try the other method for clearing the cache first just to see what it will do rather than the method that I know will work. So what was that? SSSCTL clear or cache delete, cache remove. All right, and it started 4 seconds ago. Okay, so let's try this now. Okay, so that's one way to clear the cache. So we confirm that works. We also confirm that if the rule is not out there, it's not going to work. So there's no need to go into another server. I'm not going to do it in this session because quite frankly, I'm getting tired of being in my chair. But one other thing that I would want to do is either make another rule and change the pseudo order to see which applies. So I will probably do that at another time. The last thing that I definitely wanted to try to hit in this session, this idea of user access, and this gets into the host-based access control. This is a pretty cool thing. You know, actually, I think I might do a separate session on this because this is going to be relatively long, and I'm already up to almost 30 minutes. So yeah, I think I'll take a pause here. As far as sudo policies, I think I'll be okay with that. Password policies, I need to look up that one attribute to see exactly what it means, but I would consider myself, fairly ready for that. And then in a second session, I will go over the host-based access policies, which I think is related to the user access here, or it could be the RBAC stuff that I did a little bit earlier. So if you found this video useful at all, make sure you do click like. I want to thank returning subscribers for watching another video and invite you, if you have not subscribed, to click the subscribe button and ring the bell when you do, so you know when I post new content. Thanks a lot for taking the time to watch, and I will see you the next time.